Team Fortress 2, a pillar of the gaming world. It's the game that cemented class-based shooters and ushered in a new era and breed of shooter games and genres. From its surprisingly deep and intricate gameplay to the charm of its memorable cast of mercenaries.
What makes me a good demo man? If I were a bad demo man, I wouldn't be sitting here discussing it with you now, would I?
There's a reason if you look up different lists of the best games of all time, Team Fortress 2 is usually on those lists. Do you want to know how you can tell that Team Fortress did a great job with its characters and its universe? When, despite the fact that on the surface, all of the Team Fortress 2 classes and characters are supposed to have this cartoony minimalism to their character designs and names. I mean, just take a look at them. Scout, Soldier, Pyro, Demoman, Heavy, Engineer, Medic, Sniper, and Spy. And despite their initial simplistic appearance, these 9 characters have become the exemplars of their classes. This guy isn't just an engineer, he is the engineer. This guy isn't just a spy, he is the spy. And this applies to all of the classes. The writing in this universe is also second to none.
No. Most hearts couldn't withstand this voltage. But I'm fairly certain your heart...
What was noise?
The sound of progress, my friend. Perfect. Kill me later.
The Meet the Team videos are known as one of the best pieces of video game trailers and media out there. They're hilarious. The writing is unparalleled, honestly. Because of the universe's inclination towards comedy, it's no wonder that one of the things that Team Fortress 2 is most known for is the memes that get born out of it. I mean, just take a look at this.
Victory.
Jawohl! Excellent! Last one alive, lock the door! Up you go! Ah!
You wanna fight? You wanna fight? Don't fuck come out! Don't! Oh.
The people who enjoy TF2 are passionate, and it's easy to see why. The quality of the game shines through. Team Fortress 2 will forever be remembered, and that's why no matter what happens, its legacy is forever secured. So, that begs the question, why am I talking like this, and why am I making this video? Well, you see, it's a rather touchy subject, because despite the admiration and respect Team Fortress has in the gaming and meme world, things have been rather rough for the game for some time now. This game has been through a lot of tribulation over the last few years. From the lack of meaningful content updates and patches, several bot and cheater crises, and overall just a drought of attention and tender loving care from the company in charge of the game, Valve. And while some of these problems have been alleviated, emphasis on the word some, the things people and fans and the wider community as a whole have been waiting for was something new. Not a seasonal update that the game cycles through every year like the Halloween and Christmas events, but new, meaningful content that people can really sink their teeth into. Again, to say that this game has had a drought of stuff is an understatement. Not counting the new hats, which the game still does get. It has been almost 8 years since the last content patch, Jungle Inferno, and also since the last issue of the Team Fortress 2 comic, issue number 6. It has been so long that both of these two things had become essentially memes in the TF2 community. There's a reason that people have been begging for such a long time for the supposed heavy update, or comic issue number 7. It had achieved such a meme status that it was comparable, though maybe not in scale, to like the Half-Life 3 of the Team Fortress community. People have been begging and asking for it, and for a long time, we never got anything. Well, at least up until recently. Because we were delivered a gift, as one of those things was given to us. That being, the 7th comic was released in December 20th, 2024. Now, full disclosure, if the community had the option to vote, I think most people would prefer the gameplay update versus a new comic issue, but hey, beggars can't be choosers, and besides, this comic is amazing. I made a video talking about my initial thoughts about it, link below if you want to see that, and if I can just shill the comic for a little bit, please read it. It's hilarious. All of them. Okay, shilling done. The 7th comic was finally released, and in my opinion, this final comic, the conclusion to the TF2 comic storyline, it brings to light future tidings for what lies ahead for Team Fortress 2. So just heads up, this is your disclaimer and spoiler warning. I will be going over parts of the TF2 comic in order for me to talk about this video. So if you don't want the latest issue to be spoiled, I have the Team Fortress 2 comics linked below in the video description. Again, these are phenomenal and I would highly recommend them. Very well written, and the comedy here is second to none. With all that out of the way, I will speak plainly. The message and meaning of the 7th comic is telling the player that all things come to an end, and nothing can last forever. It was hammered home in the comic over and over and over again. And given the context of Team Fortress 2 not exactly being a new game anymore, and it's been quite some time since the last update. It's an old game, but it still has a lot of players, both new and old. Yeah, that's right. I know a lot of you are old. Do you want to know how you can tell that you're old? Have you ever been doing the dishes and you got a little excited or happy to use a brand new sponge over the soggy, crappy sponge that you've been using for 2 weeks? If so, then I got bad news for you. You're an old. So with the comics now done and the conclusion now here for everyone to see, is this Valve's way of telling people that Team Fortress 2 is finished? There's no more updates or content for the future? Is this closure? Well, yes and no. It's complicated. So join me, Internet Wanderer, as I go over all the details about this comic and how it can affect the future of TF2 and maybe Valve as a whole. Because this comic has a lot of messages, and it has a lot to say to the Team Fortress 2 community. Because, a little spoiler for the video, I think it's rather apt to say that if Team Fortress 2 was a storybook, we are either near the last page or we just flip to it with the conclusion of this comic. But just because a book is done doesn't mean the story is over. Hey there, Internet Wanderer. My name is Argonax. I make video reviews, essays, commentaries, and shorts. I hope you enjoy my content enough to do all the YouTube things, such as liking and subscribing. And special thanks to all the channel members to who I am extremely grateful for their support. Their contributions mean the world to me, and it helps keep the channel going. If you'll allow me, Internet Wanderer, let's get back to the topic at hand. A little while back, assuming I didn't take forever to make this video, I made an initial impressions video talking about the comic ending. In that said video, I thought that the ending of the comic was a signal, or rather an indication that there was more stuff, more content coming for Team Fortress 2 in the future. I have since changed my mind. As reading the comic a second, a third, a fourth time, and so on, I have come to the conclusion that the Team Fortress 7 comic, the message and the theme of this story is that nothing lasts forever. All things must come to an end. And that in of itself is not a bad thing. Trying to extend anything into forever is just a recipe for disaster, a recipe for sadness and disappointment and suffering. And this comic, the one filled with dozens and dozens of jokes, does an incredible job at showing that there is nothing wrong with not wanting to live forever. And I think to help illustrate that point, I'm going to talk about each major character and player within the comic and to show what happened to them by the end of the story. First up, the Administrator, otherwise known as Helen or Elizabeth. This woman is more than 100 years old, heavily tied to the Mann family and the Mann company. To most players, they would only know her as the voice of the announcer in the games.
The point is now available for capture.
But to those who read the comics, they know that she is the big bad at the end of the story, except not in the way that people were expecting. This woman was obsessed. Whatever path, whatever journey she was on, she can no longer remember. She was fueled by rage and vengeance for so long, she completely forgot what she even was trying to accomplish by the end. And honestly, I think her last panel sums it up. She kept the patriarch of the Mann family, Zephaniah, alive for decades, maybe even a century. Why did she do this? She doesn't even know anymore. But perhaps the only thing that is known is that whatever it is she was doing, she was trying to do it as long as she could, as close to forever as she could get. And well, that's just not a sustainable dream. And there she stood, crumbling away into dust, with her obsession quite literally crumbling alongside her. The Administrator's story is the most clear-cut way to showcase this whole message of trying to live forever. Or rather, trying to make an obsession live forever. Within the story, this woman has killed, murdered, robbed for almost a century, billions of dollars and countless lives within her story, all to further her own aims and goals, and she doesn't even remember what those were anymore. Closely related to the administrator is, I would say, the main character of the Team Fortress 2 comics, Miss Pauling. Full name, Florence Pauling. The administrator's assistant or secretary, it really doesn't matter. She is a subordinate of hers, and she is equally as obsessed as her boss. But not to rule the world, nor to gain power. She was just loyal, blindly so. She was willing to do almost anything that her boss asked her to do. And I feel like Miss Pauling is also another inversion of the administrator. I think after a certain point, she forgot why she was even this loyal in the first place. She had to work with Team Fortress, the mercenary team known as Buffoons, just in order for her to achieve the goals of pleasing her boss. And to her credit, it worked. She was able to find the Australium ore that her boss had been looking for all this time. But then, when she saw what blind obsession can lead to, she finally walked away and defied the administrator. By the end of the story, it is shown that Miss Pauling seemingly has cut contact with the rest of the Team Fortress team and presumably does her own thing now. But she was at least able to send them a big turkey for the holidays. Miss Pauling, for a long time, her job was her life. In the expiration date cinematic, it is shown that she only has one day off a year.
Scout, I get one day off a year, and you just wasted it on this. Goodbye.
Wait. Why don't we discuss it over dinner?
What the hell is that?
Leaving no time for anything else, and especially not a love life or a social life. This more so relates to Scout with his constant flirting with Miss Pauling, but Miss Pauling is all business. But now, after walking away from the administrator, maybe now she has time to finally catch up on the things that she's been missing out on. Just not with the Scout, though. On a more positive note, Scout, otherwise known as Jeremy Willis, the small runt of his own family and of the Team Fortress team as well. Loud and proud, he's always wanted to be more than what people thought of him, always wanting to prove that he was everything that people doubted him of being. A showboat, but also very insecure, with one of those insecurities being the fact that he never knew his own father. And fortunately for him, he ends his story as a responsible single father of 4 kids. Scout matures a lot, surprisingly, throughout the story, with the biggest show of maturity being that he was finally able to move on from his crush for Miss Pauling, and it is his home that hosts the holiday dinner for all of the mercenaries. And most of all, it is him who greets us, the player, into his home, and thanks us personally for everything that we have done for him, his team, and, in a meta sense, for the game as a whole. Next up, the Spy, a man of many names. After years of wandering, never settling down, and taking on the identity of others, Spy finds himself now with just one definitive identity. As the co-worker, though let's be real, he is the grandfather of all of Scout's children. The ruthless and cold man has finally let family into his heart, and thus he doesn't need a disguise anymore. In the previous comic issue, comic number 6, he finds Scout mortally wounded. Knowing that there was nothing left that he could do, he finally admits to Scout and apologizes for everything that he wasn't able to do. Granted, he was wearing a disguise at the time as Tom Jones, but still, it's a beautiful moment, but even then he was wearing a face, a disguise. He doesn't need to do that anymore. And if that in of itself isn't character growth, then I don't know what is. At the end of the comic, he does the one thing that admittedly a lot of people did not expect him to do. He reveals his face for the first time, with no fear, no hesitation, in a way signaling that he is letting his guard down, that he doesn't have anything left to hide. This guy has spent decades running away from the responsibility that he owed to Scout, to family, and now he decides to make up for lost time. I also just love how the TF2 writers, everyone knows that Spy is Scout's father, but they still refuse to admit it, and that in of itself is just kind of funny to me. The Demo Man, otherwise known as Tavish Finnegan de Groot, a man synonymous with explosions and alcohol. But obviously he is more than just that. The Black Scottish Cyclops, who is actually a self-made millionaire, a workaholic, on top of being an alcoholic. In the comics, his mother makes it a point to make sure that his son is employed at all times. He goes from fat and overweight and depressed to instantly giddy the moment that he gets his job back with his old team. All of this to support his blind mother. And finally, at the end of the comic, he is able to relax and enjoy a happy holiday dinner with his mother, and all of his dear friends as well. And his haunted sword is there too, I guess. Full disclosure, I know that Demoman didn't really get that much of a highlight in the comics, but that's okay. He doesn't really need a lot of serious moments. Demoman is just there to vibe and honestly serve as one of the bigger comic relief characters. I mean, the mere fact that the guy can literally ferment his own organs to make alcohol within his own body is hilarious in of itself. Next, Pyro. Now, I'll be real. I don't know what's going on in that noodle of hers. But whatever it is going on in there, he's just happy to be with everybody, I'll be honest. People think that Pyro wasn't there in the final pages of the comic, but they're just wrong. See, she's right there, right next to the turkey. You can literally see him right next to the fireplace in one of the Polaroid pictures. Pyro is just here to act as an oddball comic relief character. There's nothing much to say. She doesn't really contribute a lot to the story. That's fine. Pyro is just here to be wacky, you know? And in my opinion, Pyro has the funniest joke in the entire comic strip. People were really expecting them to show off what Pyro exactly looked like behind the mask, but unfortunately, we already had an unmasking with the spy, and you can only get one of those. Besides, we already know what Pyro looks like.
Hillary clit. I'm voting for Hillary clit.
So guys, we did it. We reached 250,000.
Sniper, otherwise known as Mr. Mundy. After meeting his parents and finding out the truth of his birthright, he wasn't an Australian, but he was, in fact, a New Zealander. He tries to reconnect with his mother and father. The former steals $20 and leaves, and the other blasts herself into space, slowly drinking herself to death. Demoman would be proud. Sniper is then killed by the Team Fortress Classic team, only to be brought back to life by the medic. But not before meeting his adoptive parents in the afterlife, telling him that he was indeed a professional, and that professionals don't quit until the job is done. And here Sniper stands. The job is done. Sniper, the renowned loner, ends his story by having a nice meal with all his friends. And he's also being shipped with one of Heavy's sisters, so that's nice. The Medic, real name Hubert Ludwig. After also being killed by the Team Fortress Classic Heavy, Medic literally made a deal with the devil, which of course to the Medic was no big deal, came back to life, and with the Heavy's help was able to defeat the Team Fortress Classic Heavy, partially by making him into a non-consensual monkey mother. The once crazed doctor now stands at the dinner table, carving the turkey for all his dear test subjects. I mean friends. He also has pieces of all their souls. Did you know that? Yeah, Medic didn't have much to do in this comic, but that's okay. The guy brought Sniper back to life, and he brought himself back to life. The Engineer, real name Del Conager. The Engineer was busy for most of the story, tending to the Administrator, keeping her alive with his Australian gadgets. It is stated that he and his father before him have been working for the Administrator and the Man Company for almost a century now. And now, with the demise of the Administrator and Zephaniah Man, the Engineer is now free, for the first time in this entire comic series, to finally join his friends. Not on a mission, not on another job to do, but rather just to enjoy a meal. This is also the first time that we see him without his goggles, so it's just nice to see. The Heavy Weapons Guy, known by the name Misha. It is shown multiple times over and over again that Heavy's only real motivation was keeping his family safe, his mother and his sisters. But part of this realization was realizing that they can take care of themselves. And with the safety of his family secured, he vowed to join the team again in order to vanquish evil. Heavy is usually portrayed as a stoic, doesn't say much during the comics. He is a man of action, and whenever Heavy is on screen, you know he's about to throw down some hands. Heavy gets his big spotlight moment when he 1v1s the Team Fortress Classic Heavy and comes out on top. Heavy's biggest contribution to the last comic is saving Soldier when he stupidly gets himself kidnapped by the Korean Mafia. And then Heavy makes his final appearance towards the end of the comic, holding the turkey high above his shoulders, and then stands at the center of the table, with the entire team on both his left and right side, his mother and sisters celebrating in the festivities as well. And honestly, this is the only thing that Heavy has ever wanted, his entire family happy and safe alongside him. Soldier, otherwise known as Jane Doe. Probably one of the more wacky characters in the entire cast. Actually, no, scratch that. He is definitely the wackiest character in this entire franchise. And that's honestly what makes him so lovable. The warmongering, super patriotic, and very, very stupid soldier is probably the most beloved character in this franchise. which makes it all the more saddening to know that his voice actor passed away. But I think Valve did the right thing of honoring him by making Soldier kind of front and center in this last issue of the comic. Soldier appears in quite a few pages, and the comic really tries to do him justice by making sure that his side of the story is told. He ends up marrying Heavy's sister, Jana, has 2 kids, has, surprisingly, some sort of closure with his former roommate, Marasmus, and somehow gives Tom Jones a roommate in the afterlife. Yeah, Soldier kills Tom Jones in this universe. It's weird. Don't question it. Soldier is probably one of the perfect examples of how a character who seemingly is just there for comic relief, but when the entire universe is comic relief, then is he even comic relief at that point? Soldier goes from an extremely dim-witted character to, by the end of the story, a still very dim-witted character, but one that has a happy ending. Him with a family, and of the 9 mercenaries, I think Soldier is the one whose ending is the one that I expected the least. But it's a welcome surprise, and I wouldn't have it any other way for this lovable moron. Also, Bucket.
This is a bucket.
Dear God.
There's more.
No.
And to cap off this section with all the Team Fortress 2 characters' story, we have Saxton Hale. The CEO of Manco and an eternal glory seeker and adventurer, Saxton has lived his entire life trying to seek glory, always trying to one-up himself whenever he can. This leads him into all sorts of adventures and shenanigans, always achieving a goal bigger than the last. And I think his story is the best way to encapsulate what would happen if Team Fortress was to continue the way that it does. His ending shows him fighting off cheetahs. Is this a hint towards Team Fortress's problems with bots and cheaters? Because, you know, cheetahs. Anyway, Saxton's story ends with him and his longtime partner, Mags, fighting off a pack of cheetahs in the present day. They're old, they're decrepit, but they still have that sense of adventure within them. And they end the story by saying, "What's the matter, Mags? Do you want to live forever?" So, with most of the character stories ending, or at least having a conclusion, it really does give a sense of closure to this whole story, and to the game by extension. Now, of course, this comic ending is just that, an ending to the comic series. But of course, context does matter. It's been years since the last content update, and more often than not, Valve just likes to pretend like Team Fortress 2 just doesn't exist. Nowhere does it actually state that Valve will discontinue work on new content for Team Fortress 2, at least not major content stuff, like a major patch or more comic issues. But at the same time, it's been years. Valve is working on new things, new games, new hardware, and Team Fortress 2, it's an old game at this point. Any other game company would have sunsetted this game a long time ago. But of course, Valve and Team Fortress 2 is an anomaly, because most of the time, even normal live service games don't live as long as Team Fortress does. It's a seasoned and respected game with a lot of legacy behind it. And I would say Team Fortress, more so than most games, demands a lot of passion from its player base. And it really shows. The Team Fortress fandom and community might not get along a lot of the times, but there's one thing that people cannot deny. These guys are passionate about their game. It shows. Anyone from regular casual gamers to some of the biggest content creators got their start on Team Fortress. Team Fortress content creators is actually an anomaly in of itself. There are a lot of them. Quite a few of them I would consider the old guard of Team Fortress content creators, having their start somewhere between the early 2010s. Take your pick of Star, Germa, Funk, Uncle Dane. But there's also a decent amount of content creators who became famous after the game's final update, Jungle Inferno, such as Lazy Purple, Soundsmith, and El Maxo. And there are new budding content creators cropping up all the time. How is it that a game this old, that hasn't received any official support for years, a game that is effectively abandoned, can still cultivate such a passionate community? That really just goes to show how special a game like Team Fortress is. It's not a stretch to say that the community is truly what kept this game going after years of developer neglect. Community events, community servers, and lobbies. Do you know the song TikTok by Joji? Yeah, I can't listen to that song anymore because of the Team Fortress community. Thanks, guys. It's somewhat telling that some of the most popular memes of Team Fortress came out after Jungle Inferno. Various Source filmmaker movies and Gmod animations that further propel this game and forever cement its meme identity.
The Heavy is dead.
Yes, I am dead.
Why is the heavy dead?
I don't know. I think Hitler.
You are dead.
Okay.
The community truly carried this game when Valve wouldn't, which made it all the more annoying whenever this game was being invaded by third-party bad actors. That being the bot and cheater crises that plagued the game for years. And while a lot of these movements have had various successes to different degrees, the latest one, the fixed TF2 movement, is for the most part a success. There have been various reports about waves of bots that have been attempting to get into the game only to be swiftly banned shortly after. So, at least for now, it seems like Valve is still actively banning. Keyword: still. Is this something that Valve can continue to do years down the line? We can only hope. Can I definitively say that Team Fortress 2 will never get a major content update? Well, I can at least somewhat guarantee one thing. Whenever Team Fortress 2 hits its 20-year birthday in 2027, Valve will definitely be doing a celebration similar to what they did for Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2's 25th and 20-year anniversary respectively. In other words, we can expect some sort of documentary or maybe some sort of content update come 2027. As to what Valve will do for Team Fortress, I don't know. But the work that they put in for both Half-Life 1 and 2's anniversaries did show. So if nothing else, you can at least look forward to Team Fortress 2's 20th anniversary in a few years. But that's not exactly the content update that people are asking about, is it? Will Team Fortress 2 receive one more gameplay update? If I'm being completely honest, I legitimately have no idea. As much as this comic is a big deal to a large part of the Team Fortress community, a large portion of Team Fortress players still don't read these comics. A lot of them don't even know the comics existed in the first place. So here I am talking about the ending of the comic series. Meanwhile, they don't even know about the comic series even beginning in the first place. So at least for players who only deal with the game directly, there is still no sense of closure, or at least of something to expect, another goalpost to strive for. And to those players, I don't know, will Valve make one more gameplay update to also have the game go out with a bang? It's hard to say. Personally, that was my initial impression when I first released that video a while back. I thought that Valve was going to do one more big gameplay update, but now I'm not so sure. If they do, then that's a pleasant surprise. If they don't, then they kinda already signaled that with the ending of the comic. But if I'm allowed to huff some of that copium a little bit, just for a little while, I can at least leave you with this little tidbit of information. In the comic, it hints that conflict will continue. Sure, all the mercenaries are now happily retired and no longer actively serving as a mercenary team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there can't be any more stories to tell within this universe. For example, the fact that Manco is now owned by two new CEOs, Bidwell and Reddy. And we also know for a fact that there are different Team Fortress teams, Team Ajax, Team Bravo, and so on. It's actually rather funny that Team Fortress is the F team. It really sells home the whole fact that these guys are really seen as clowns in their own universe. So maybe sometime far in the future, Team Fortress 3 might not be so far-fetched. Valve seems to be in the start of this new renaissance period for the company, and within this decade of 2020, after all, they're working on that supposed new Half-Life game. They also got new hardware being worked on. So perhaps years down the line, we can expect a Team Fortress 3 eventually, probably. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are at the genesis point of the "Where is Team Fortress 3 memes?" Half-Life 3 got it whenever episode 3 didn't come out, so probably we'll expect some "Where is Team Fortress 3 memes? Probably. Honestly, this is just an excuse for me to talk about this one panel here in the comic. Demo Man staring at this other team's Demo Man, Iron Man looking ass. It's just really cool. Makes you wonder at like what a Team Fortress 3 can actually look like. So here we are at the end of the video, and if I'm being completely honest, I don't think Team Fortress 2 is getting any more major updates. So that begs the question, should we even continue to play this game? A game that the developer kinda just gave us a hint that they are no longer going to be working on it anymore? Should we just quit? Be thankful for the memories we've gained and just stop playing this and play something else? To answer that, I have a bit of an analogy. a bit of a story, really. Whenever you play a game of Team Fortress 2, there's objectives to do, a goalpost. You can push the payload, capture the flag, control the point, etc. There is a goal for the team to do, an endpoint. And for the longest time, players were waiting for the next objective or goalpost for the game, whether that be a new update, a new content patch, something. But again, this comic, to me, is signaling that there is no more next objective. There is no more next goal. Team Fortress 2 has achieved and surpassed every expectation that people have about it. It's a pillar of gaming and of internet culture as a whole. Maybe Team Fortress 2 didn't do everything it promised it would, but it more than earned its reputation as a legendary game. So, does this mean that you should stop playing Team Fortress 2? Not at all. Going back to the analogy of Team Fortress 2 being a game mode, sure, there might no longer be a next objective. There might not be another goal to do. But do you know what game is known for its players not doing the objective and rather just chilling and vibing with the other players in the server? What other game is known for hosting multi-hour long dance parties where the term friendly is taken as literally as possible? Who says there needs to be a new goal to reach, a new objective to pursue? There doesn't need to be a next or a new or another. There can just be. We can all just enjoy the game for what it is, for as long as we can. What will this game be in the future? We'll never know. But we don't need to know to have a good time. Does the knowledge of no potential new update ruin the experience for you? Well, it shouldn't. Team Fortress 2 has been like that for almost 8 years now. Think of all of those 24-hour instant respawn servers where people just, for a lack of a better word, dick around. There's people who do the objectives, but there's also the vast majority don't. They're just here enjoying the game. And I think that's what you all need to do as well. I think this is the perfect ending for Team Fortress 2. The game didn't go out with a bang, but it didn't go out with a whimper either. I think this is the perfect ending for a game as bombastic as this. Because, like I said in the intro of this very long video, just because a game is done doesn't mean it's over. And after all, do you really want to live forever? Thanks for watching, Internet Wanderer. Do the YouTube things.